welcome to the show today. Today I have Thomas Stephan on the show, and he's the head IT, wealth management and advisory at Julius Bär. And I'm very excited to talk to you today and hear a bit more about your story. Last time we had a great conversation about some fun things along your journey, and we talked a little bit about the reasons why you're doing what you're doing, and I'm very excited to dive a little bit more into this today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate to be here.
Thank you for being here. So let's start with the story. Can you maybe mention a couple of, maybe one or two moments that you feel along the way of your journey really shaped you as a human being, shaped you as a leader?
Sure. I think some of the key moments in life have been that during my studies of mechanical engineering, and also then my working besides my studies, I figured out that there is more. There's the financial aspect. And that's also what was driving me to study business administration afterwards. And then, so that basically gave me two facets. So not only what's possible, but also what is affordable. And finally then joining a consultancy. I basically started in the consultancy saying I was never ever before in banking. And I wanted to start in banking, so my learning curve is by far the biggest one. And that's how I basically made my start in banking. And I was in private banks and investment banks in whole Europe and in the US and so on. And yeah, I never got out of banking again because I thought it was quite exciting. So these were the kind of two key moments to shape a little bit my professional direction.
This is great, and I love what you said in the last sentence there, and I want to dive into that because you said, never got out of banking because it's quite exciting. I want to know more about that, and the reason is because banking from the outside can sometimes look a little bit dull if you don't know the workings behind it and everything, or what gets people excited about this world of banking. So, what is it for you? Why do you believe, or why do you feel that banking is so exciting?
I think it's two key aspects. Number one, it's the IT in itself, because if you think about banking, private banking as well as retail banking, I would say 90% is IT services the client receives, right? It is really the product. The product comes via IT. Even in the conversation with your advisor, it's IT based stuff you see on your e-banking based on IT. So it's all that compared to whatever, Nike or Volkswagen, where you have still a car or a sports shoe, right? So here it's a lot about IT. So that's definitely one. And the other one is basically the change. I'm now 20 years in the banking space. And to be honest, it doesn't look like 20 years ago. So it is the products, it's the regulation, it's the people, it's the speed, it's the channels, it's the cross-country topics. So it's really in every dimension it changed, and it changed dramatically and fast. And that makes it on the other side pretty exciting.
It sounds like there's a lot of variety in there.
It is. And I mean, also if you look at the different profiles, so I have done mergers, I have done huge releases, I have done replacements of systems, so it's all that. So if you also look at the management facets or at the things you do, it is hardware, software, it is front, mid, back office, and so on and so forth. So it is a lot of variety, a lot of flexibility and things you can do basically. And as long as you don't stay dull for 20 years in one and the same job, then yeah, it's quite nice.
It really sounds like no day is like another in your life.
Fortunately, as well as unfortunately, it's not. So, but it's also a change that when I started as a developer, I was pretty proud and satisfied that there's code which works, right? So it was a credit application I developed. And at that time, you could have asked me, so what have you done this week? And I could show you my application. If you ask me now, so Thomas, what have you done last week? I can show you my meeting schedule, and I can show you a working team which really functions very well, of around 80, 90 people, where I'm also very proud of. So also that changed what makes me happy and what makes me bring to the bank. Yeah.
This is really interesting what you just said. I want to stay on that for a second, because what I heard is that you, over the past 20 years, one of the big moves or changes you made is you went from building code to building teams, so to say, or building organizations. And that's a really interesting one. So why did you decide to go down that path? Because you could have stayed for, developer your whole life.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a little bit a given path on one side, but it's also then the aspiration to have multiplicator effect, right? So doing a code, I can code and I can deliver 1 man-year development in 1 man-year. That's what I can deliver. Now I'm able to deliver hundreds of man-years in 1 year, right? So I have 150 people last year, so I can deliver more. And so the effect to bring your ideas to the table, to the bank, to improve, to change, is leveraged, and I love that. And between the coding myself and now being that kind of head of a huge team, these tween steps were doing concepts, doing architecture. So I was an architect. I was a guy reviewing concepts and coming up with new ideas for banks and so on. So there are steps within between, and I believe they are necessary in your professional backpack so that you can be successful in leading such a team than nowadays.
This is really interesting. Now, more and more it makes sense what you said about banking as well, because you also mentioned leverage. And leverage, of course, in finances and in IT as well is huge in both areas. Leverage is huge because it has to do a lot with, financial leverage on the one side, but also with knowledge, basically, on the other side, with ideas and knowledge and putting them into something that is a real outcome, and then putting those two together, which are already high on leverage, and putting them together multiplies them even more. This is really interesting, sort of like where this is coming from. And I want to talk a little bit more about, going back to the story, but some more important assets, sort of like the lessons that we learn along the way. Because at the end of the day, the reason we end up where we are today is very often because of the lessons we learned, experiences we made, and things like that. So can you share maybe 1 or 2 really, really important lessons that you learned along the way, and sort of the story behind those lessons?
I think there are 2 lessons. One is, it is still about the detail and the quality, because at the end of the day, we are working in an environment, and with IT especially, where you have the classical garbage in, garbage out. So if your data is not correct, or if the code is not tested well, you have a problem. And you cannot just overcome it and discuss, no, last weekend is your release weekend and it works or it doesn't. There's no gray zone, right? And I think you have still to pay attention to that part. There's nothing you can basically bypass in that sense. You have to stick to these kind of factors like quality and also the commitment of your people to commit to the quality, to the ownership of the people, and then it works, right? So that's the one side. On the other side, you have still the topic, you have both. You have the aspirational people in IT who want to change the world, but unfortunately our world changed in a way that I have not the freedom to let my people do whatever they want, right? I mean, I asked them to check the copy machine at the end of the day. I asked them to check if the requirements are right. So a lot of administration, bureaucracy, or sharing knowledge with external colleagues somewhere and just monitor them because they do the real job. So I have a lot of hardcore IT guys pretty getting down to reality that no, we are not the hacker, fintech, startup, we do it as quickly. Like I had the pleasure 20 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago, I was able to do the requirements, the coding, the testing, and the go live. It was all me. And if you tell this an auditor today, he asks about segregation of duty and roles, and how, no way, that cannot. So you see that the change in the industry, and specifically in our area, is not always beneficial and motivative for the people. And so you have to come up with alternatives to motivate them and to basically encourage them still to keep the energy and the willingness to commit and to go the extra mile in the relevant moment.
So let's talk a little bit about this more, because that's really interesting in terms of like, you know, keeping up a high energy, you know, keeping the engagement and everything. So let's start sort of like at a starting point of every team or every project or every mission, which is, well, getting people on board. So how do you get the right people on board? How do you bring the right crowd of people together? It doesn't matter if you hire people, you know, for a new project or for a team, or if you build mission teams internally. How do you bring the right people on board for anything?
Basically, it's two or threefold. Number one, there's a style of interview I learned over the years, and I also shared with my people, because as I think I mentioned previously, we are only now up to 30 guys internally, and we are around 100 guys externally. And so we need to be very, very spot on in our interviews, because we constantly have externals we bring on board new. And so if you are not getting the right people, like you said, then you're stuck, right? It doesn't matter if it's internal or external. So we have this kind of interview. Is there a specific trick? If you ask me, yes and no. I'm checking the backpack of the person, right? I'm asking for 4 quadrants. One is about the banking knowledge. Can they talk on eyesight with the level with the business? The technology part, where are they home, application, testing, architecture, infrastructure, and so on. Then it's about projects, project methodology, where have they been in projects, do they know how good feels, these topics and projects. Last but not least, it's about team players selling themselves, communicating, languages, culture, and those. So based on those 4 quadrants, I basically try to judge. And then at the basic, it's also the feeling, the personal feeling, the chemistry, because I need to trust. And trust is the big thing. And so that's on one side how we do it. On the other side, I give my direct reports and my project manager a lot of freedom. They choose their team. The team, who's the right goalie, who's the right front runner, who's the right man on the field to win the game. And that's really how we do it. And if you don't think that this is the right goalie, yeah, exchange him. And it doesn't matter if he's the right person. We don't care about specific black, green, amber, or whatever color of person, or it doesn't matter. It's about trust and can they do the job, right? And I'm very lucky. I have a very good team. I think I have most or highest performing team here. We have the largest programs we deliver here. So we are pretty successful. And trust and being a role model then comes to the success. And I think also my people, my direct reports, they like me. They trust me. And I take always, and that's a little bit of touchy moment then explaining it. But I think it's now it was the 4th year in my role here that they invite me for my birthday to a dinner. And I'm not allowed to pay, but that's not the point. It's about they spend one evening with me, right? They give away one private personal evening to be with the team, with me, and to celebrate my my birthday, which is kind of wow. I'm always a little bit emotionally touched, right?
I love that. I mean, I love what you shared there. I mean, with the 4 quadrants as well, but also with you know, sort of like how you measure also the connection between the team members, but also between the team and you with this birthday thing as well. I mean, this is a big piece, and as you said, you know, I mean, a private evening is a lot of value. You know what I mean? It's huge value, especially in today's day and age where, you know, they're fairly rare. So this is huge. And there's another thing that always interests me, especially with, you know, you have lots of different teams, but overall you have one team. And how do you make sure people actually work together well? So there's lots of different disciplines people work on, different projects. They need to come together for maybe for a mission team, then they go to other things again. They work on different things. Sometimes they work together, sometimes not. There's different cultures, there's different backgrounds, different types of personalities and everything. How do you make sure people work together?
Basically, it sounds simple, but align the hidden agendas. So align what everyone is striving for. And as you might know, in every organization, you have very often the break the silos and so on. And so also there was one occasion at the end of the year, I was participating in one of the team meetings. I try to get into those meetings whenever I can. And then there was some time left, and I asked, as it was end of year, give me 2 or 3 good and 2 or 3 bad things, right? And the colleagues were pretty much complaining all the same way about colleagues in the infrastructure area, how difficult it is to do business with them, to get the support, to get the attention. And I basically turned around to the lead of that team and said, actually, that's your fault. Because in another team, I have a guy from the infrastructure team sitting in that team, being in that team. And that person is talking about our project and our things we do. While in that team, it was kind of, no, it's them, they're in the other building, in the other, and so on. So, and we changed it. So more or less a couple of weeks or months later, we made it happen that one of the infrastructure guys was sitting in the team and was really assigned to that team, to those projects. And guess what? All the criticism, all that is gone. Right? It's one team.
This
Pretty
is
simple.
huge. This is huge, and it sort of like goes back to you've always referred to your organization as one team. You haven't said I got multiple teams and this and that. You always said is one team, and I think that's why, because you're trying to make sure that people feel the ownership of each other, so to say, because then it's us. Yeah, it's no longer it's our project. It's not it's their project and we need to work on it or whatever. It's our project, and it can be such a small thing or perceived to be such a small thing, but it makes a massive difference. This topic of ownership or commitment or buy-in or whatever you want to call it, it's huge. If it's your thing, well, it's your thing, and it's then you, and then the responsibilities on you, the faults are yours, the successes are yours. So all the roller coasters come with it, and that's a really powerful one. And another one that I have is going back to trust. So you said, well, I trust them and this and that, but how do you do that? So do you just say, well, I just simply have to trust, so I trust, so I don't micromanage anybody. I just trust that everything is going to work out well, and we don't need to worry about KPIs and goals and everything. Or how do you work with that? So how do you strike the balance between not micromanaging, but still sort of like understanding where things are going?
Actually, I run it in a kind of top-down mode. And it's up to the team to do the bottom-up. And just for example, so I'm the so-called delivery sponsor for large projects and large programs. I'm not able to challenge projects bottom-up. Is this really 10 million or 5 million? Or I don't know. I have no clue. But I have quite some experience around KPIs. So for me, I know development of a normal project is 30%. So really developer starting to code until he finished is 30% of the project. Everything before the developer starts is kind of 30% too. Everything after the developer is also kind of 30%. And 10% is management. So I have my 100%. So if I see now a project plan or a proposal or you name it, guess what? I'm checking those kind of numbers. Is this 30%? Do I understand that? I don't need to understand we need now server X, Y, Z. I don't need that, right? And this is how I challenge my people, and I'm asking for help, or I'm also anticipating based on my expertise, right? So we have a project with a huge data provider. So I'm basically saying, guys, let's go there first, right? Let's do a quick, how it's called in Swiss, Durchstich. So let's do a quick check if we can establish any kind of line, right? I call it the T model. So we do a deep dive in one of the whatever features it is, and we leave the widestness of the project for the moment. And when we established a link, then we go further. And guess what? People are coming to me and saying, "You were right. This was the most difficult thing to connect to that vendor," right? And that's basically where your expertise comes into the game, because I have seen so many projects, so many different things, so I can leverage that. And this is how trust is established. I know my people are very good in the bottom up, and they know that I'm bringing in my expertise if I have it, or I challenge them on that level, and it works.
I love that. It's about basically knowing what you're good at and knowing what you should leave to others. And this is really powerful because it requires a certain awareness, you know, because, well, some people think they're great at everything, or, you know, they try to be good at everything, which usually is a quite of a big of a chaos. And really understanding what you're good at, and understanding what you're providing and what your role is, essentially. Because let's be honest, the title says nothing about a role. Understanding what your real role is, what your real job is as a leader, I think that's huge. And understanding what you're good at and what others are good at, that is also huge, very much.
I think that's spot on. I'm not leading with my title. I'm leading with basically they trust me that I come up with ideas and do things differently. I mean, I don't want to say we innovate or we do things. We try to do things differently, to challenge, right? I mean, a couple of examples. So my key questions to my test managers is how many bugs have we not found? And basically everyone is helpless and says, I have no clue because I haven't found them. So I'm basically saying, but there's a method and we will do it. So the method is pretty simple. So you ask the developer to hide some bugs, right? So, and if he's hiding 10 bugs and your tester found 7 out of them, you can just apply the same ratio, saying that's the same with the other bugs he hasn't seen, right? So is this super duper scientific and accurate? No, but I can tell you it worked 2 or 3 times, right? To the surprise of my people, right? They were really surprised. And we had even some kind of fight because the developers were not feeling well, working against the testers and breaking the team and so on. But at the end, it was quite successful, right? Or other thing is, we had a huge program, really, really, really huge, right? MIFID. And we are talking a 2-digit million, it's more than 20 million. And so what we did there is we did a survey, right? So we basically anticipate the program goes wrong. When the program goes wrong, something like an auditor comes in and is asking the classical questions, right? Daniel, have you understood what you need to do? Have you got the training you need? Have you used the tools? All these kind of questions. So we asked them pretty much at the beginning, right? In a kind of anonymous survey. I'm not sure if you know that Mentimeter. So we took a tool. And we told them it's not secret. It's, I mean, in theory, with the ID, we could check back or so, but I'm not interested. I'm interested in your answers. So, and these answers were pretty positive, but we had also some kind of, hey, we should look at that, right? They're not feeling comfortable here or there. But basically they said, yes, I believe the program will happen. I believe it's a success. So these are the ideas to do things differently, right? And we are a huge team. We do also team building. We call it knowledge fair, but actually it's a speed dating, right? So over lunch, it's a brown bag session in the auditorium. We have in 4 corners, 4 of my projects presenting 12 minutes. And after 12 minutes, you have a ring, and then every corner is moved, or the audience is moving 1 corner, right? And so after 4 corners, you're done, and you presented 4 projects to your whole team. Pretty efficient, So we did it twice. It has a lot of good reputation in the bank in the meantime. People thinking about copying and so on. So this is how we do things differently, and we do on top.
I also especially love the auditing from the beginning, not when it needs fixing, basically, but from the very beginning, sort of like setting a structure where you make sure that even if things go wrong, and many times they do, and if the auditors come in, you're prepared for that because you've sorted things out from the beginning. You made sure things are set up the right way from the beginning, and this is huge. And the other thing as well is about sort of like this circulative way of sharing with each other and making sure people understand what's going on and what it also does, especially in 12 minutes, because talking about it for 2 hours, easy. Talking about it for 12 minutes, really hard. So this also forces people to drill down things, to simplify everything, to communicate better, and to communicate with everyone, and also communicate with people who may not understand all the workings and all the details behind it from the other teams. So this is huge. Love that you share that. So the last question I have is a little bit like far down the road. Let's say you're 80 years old, you're sitting in your rocking chair and you're looking out on your terrace or wherever you want to sit, and you look back at your life and you look back at sort of like how the world has developed. What is the impact sort of like on a bigger scale that you want to see have happen over that lifetime that you had of, until you're 80 years old?
That's a nice question, because I had that thought before. So I love to change people, and I love to change their career path, and I love to really make an impact on them. And I promote people in the sense of new chances, new challenges. And I mean, this year I lost 4 directors out of my team, right? And one is in central architecture, one is in a different thing, because the opportunities I can give them now is not the next step. So we agreed jointly that he might be better placed in a different team. But I also promote people in my team, definitely. But at the end of the day, it's really, I mean, one gentleman from a small service owner, he's now a huge solution architect, right? And is responsible for a 30 million program. And to make that and to see him growing in those 3 years is dramatic. And but as a leader, you feel also, if you develop someone, it hurts. You feel the pain, because there's not that guy who's doing the same job like the last years. No, you lost him, right? And if you feel no pain, you know you're not developing your people. If you feel the pain, yes, you know you're developing. I mean, my former assistant wanted to become a project lead. Guess what? My calendar was a mess, right, for a while. So if you feel pain, you're on the right track. You develop your people.
I love that. About on the one side on developing people, but also, it can be painful, as you said, and letting go of things and knowing when you let go, it will be painful. And then still letting go takes courage. It takes a bit of getting over the hill and say, well, short term, it's going to be really painful. Long term, it's definitely the right decision. And we humans tend to be short-term animals when it comes to reward and everything. So it takes some courage to do that. So really appreciate, sharing that with me here. So what we're going to do is below this video, we're going to share, we're going to link to some sources. One is, social media profiles, and the other one is also the company page. So people can, on the one side, stay up to date on what's happening, what's going on, fun stuff, exciting stuff that you guys are up to. But on the other hand, also connect on whatever kind of opportunities come up. Because at the end of the day, the best things are created when you connect on these things. So thank you so much, Thomas, for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Thanks.